Hello everyone, this is Bart Camp. I'm here with Malcolm Blunt. It's time for another talk. This time it's going to be even more strange. We're going to talk about some of the notes that Malcolm took, because of course in all the files that I went through, all the folders, there are copious amounts of notes that Malcolm made on his visit to either NARA or other archives. And I kept emailing these copies of the PDFs of these scans to Malcolm, and Malcolm would say, well, that's such and such, this is a 65 file, which is an FBI espionage file. And, this is missing, and this I found, and that was later on released, and so forth. So for the average layman, it's very hard to make sense of all this stuff, and of course Malcolm is the only one that can. So I'm just going to pass it on to him. He's going to talk through a few. He's going to read out the numbers as well. So if anyone wants to check the RIF numbers, feel free. And yeah, take it away, Malcolm.
Okay, just looking through, Bart's given me a bunch of old notes, which I took in the 90s, I think. And I'm looking at 003380, which is a House Select Committee memo between Betsy Wolfe, of Betsy Wolfe, where she's talking to Victor Marchetti. That was, at that time, that was withdrawn. So that's a document that was missing. Underneath I've written about the problems with the mail and document register. That was all the incoming correspondence that came into the HSCA, and also the notations about testimony and interviews. What disturbed me about the mail and document register of the House Select Committee on Assassinations was this is supposed to be a guide for research, where you can actually get some information about. You've got a number, HSCA number, where you can actually go and research it. But there are pages and pages and pages of redactions. And I don't understand that. I really don't understand what NARA is doing, allowing that. I mean, who's doing this? Is this NARA, or is this an outside agency like CIA saying we want this redacted? That's important because it's such a crucial guide for us. That was a huge investigation, and we need to have clarity in their incoming and outgoing document register, so we know exactly what's available. At the moment, it's redacted to hell, so we need that. 003381. This is Betsy Wolfe talking to Victor Marchetti again. Can't get that one. Couldn't find that one. 03439 is 00339 is deals with a classified document from the security office, which has been withdrawn via the Department of Justice, which I don't understand, which is a very strange one. No subject. 003463 is a CIA letter concerning Guy Richard's letter to Princeton, reference Alan Dulles. That was absent in the file as well, so that wasn't there. Thomas Becker, 005184, 5185, 5186, 5187, 5188, 5189, 5190, 5191, 5192.
That's a lot of files.
Those were absent files when I looked. So that's there.
If it's so clear cut with Beckham, why is there so much secrecy around him? Huh? Just
000991 is Surel Brady interview notes with Golitsyn. They were absent. 000992 Ken Klein notes interview with Golitsyn, absent. ...000169 Peter Dariabe notes by Klein missing. 000168 Johanna Smith notes of Peter Dariabe. 000161 Cyril Brady notes with Peter Dariabe, all missing. I don't know if you want. Do you want crypts? Any crypts or digraphs down here?
I'm not bothered about crypts that much.
I've got just a one-off.
Okay.
AC/CRS.
NSC.
AC/CRS. Acting Chief, Coordination and Review Staff. That's
Nice title.
That's my bread and butter. So, HSCA 180-10142-10008. Staffer's notes. 19 pages. Again.
That sounds like almost similar to the Hosty document that I
Not
found.
to be found.
There was a staff interview.
Oh, wait a minute. There's I've got a subline under it.
What's that?
So it's to do with Brasco of the scientific branch of Office of Reports and Requirements. So that's like the industrial registry, and it's to do with the how they got the picture of Oswald in Minsk. You know, with the mechanical, the crane. So, and that's how the Kramer name and photograph got. So it came from a guy called Brasco. I've forgotten that. There you go. You forget these things. Box 19, folder 20, document 180-10141, 1036, which is Staffer's notes, 43 pages, again. Couldn't find those. George don't need his CIA phone extensions. I don't think you want those, do you? I don't want to copy some of this stuff. Oh yeah, HSC, for those interested in New Orleans, Bob Burras, HSCA 006104, 6103, 6102, 6100, 6101. 006089, that's another HSCA. James Nolan to G. Robert Blakey. 006182, I always regret not doing that. That was a 60 minutes TV program in America, 60 minutes. And it was a transcript of the program they did, which was called Inside CIA. I remember thinking it was such an interesting transcript, and then I never copied it. Oh, jeez. But at least I got the notes of it. 006267, correspondence with US Coast Guard, that's Gary Cornwall.
This is of course related to the interviews that all disappeared.
Yeah.
From the INS.
004081.
That's one.
Which was notes of a conversation, phone conversation, with the Simpson family. I think that's to do with Colonel Burris, I think.
Oh, Howard. Howard Leigh Burris, isn't it? Or is it Leigh Burris?
004112, correspondence with a guy called Alan Nelson from Bismarck, North Dakota. That's about Oswald. That's that one. All of Jack Ruby's telephone records.
All of them.
Yeah. Well, the ones that, I mean, there are hundreds. And that's in House Select Committee number 007690 and 007987.
And they are they you can find those, or is it?
Yeah, they're on. Do you remember the old printouts they used to do? Those old fold over things from way back.
Total nightmare. The first computer printouts, basically.
First
It's just one giant sheet with perforated edges.
Yeah. Security classified file, a 3-page summary of an interview with Igor Korchnov, which is something I definitely would like to see. 6th of April 1978, and that number is 180-10110-10523. Donald Denisea, 014168, House Select Committee again, 92678. There was obviously an interview with Murrett, which was 014009, Marilyn Murrett, I suppose, and 014010. Again, I couldn't locate those at the time. 014014, testimony of Sanders, whoever Sanders is. 013963 is Larry Huff. I think I did get that later. So,
I've got quite a few files on Huff.
yeah. Well, there's another guy when you think about it. When you go, I went through the stuff they printed in the House Select Committee volume, and you get pages that are really saying this guy's not credible, this guy's not credible, and then they finish up with a pilot of the planes, of the flights that he said took place. And he says,
very interesting story.
And he says, he confirms exactly what Huff said. Well, I would like to know why Blakey never followed up on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting story by itself.
Yeah.
That's a really good mystery that deserves more investigation.
Definitely. Well, he's another one of these guys that he comes forward expecting other people to back him up, and it didn't happen. James Wilcott, again, he gives a whole list of names of people because he believes they're going to back him up. And Donald Denisea, list of names of people that are going to back him up. Two of those,
there's a pattern.
Huff and Wilcott, they didn't get any backup. They didn't get any backup from their people around them. It was different with Denisea because they never followed up. He gave a list of names to the church committee. As far as I know, they may have been interviewed, but they don't exist in the church committee files. So Denisea is a guy that saw a debriefing report of Oswald. You know, another guy that's been rubbished, including by my friend John Newman. But I met that guy and I sat with him for 4.5 hours. He's the real deal. He's the real deal. If he said he saw a debriefing report of Oswald, he saw a debriefing report of Oswald. And he gave those names definitely gave them to the House Select Committee. I must have copied it 50 times, that list of names, hoping that people, I've circulated it over the years, hoping people would try and locate those individuals, but nobody ever did. His supervisor, didn't say his supervisor in the Foreign Documents Division was a guy called Ed Strackner. And Donald said to me, had they got hold of Strackner, he would have definitely confirmed, because they both looked at the debrief together. They both looked at Oswald's debrief together. I want to know why the House Select Committee never interviewed one of those people, or did they? Is it part of the document register which has been redacted? We can't see it. We can't see that the House Select Committee interviewed these people. You see, that's why that document register is so important. We need to be able to locate everything that's on that document register.
And then be able to see.
It makes no sense to me that he gives them 6 names and they don't follow up any of them, which back up the story of a debrief of Oswald. Although, as you know, as everybody else knows, CIA have denied the fact that there was a debrief of Oswald. Donald says something completely different. So there we go. That's another thing. We went off on a tangent again. Oh yeah. There was a project called Project Blanket where Leo Churn was involved in. Which Project Blanket was mixed up at that time with, as far as Churn was concerned, because they needed a covert security clearance for the use by the Central Cover Division in providing cover. They needed QK and Chad, which was like a permission to approach. You know, in other words, you were cleared to approach another person by CIA. So that's that one. Arrestus Pena, FBI file 105-130460, 157 pages.
Gone.
I didn't quite get around to copying those.
Is it gone, or is it?
I wish I had done.
Yeah. So is it around still, you reckon, or not?
Oh yeah, that'll
Yeah?
still be around. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I find Pena a very interesting customer.
Yeah. And we talked about earlier on a note of CIA number 0113/19, 12th of March 1979, report on Antonio Veciana destroyed. For all those people that think Veciana's full of shit, I want to know why the CIA destroys a report on him on the 12th of March 1979.
That's before.
I know, give a number.
Is that before he went to the slammer?
They give the number, CIA number 0113/19.
Was that before he went to the slammer then, or not?
Oh no, that was later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That he got caught with a.
Yeah, that was in
With
the
the
early
Charlie
70s.
and-
Early 70s, yeah.
Right.
HSCA 180-10145-10234 is staffers, HSC staffers notes on electronic surveillance held at the Mexico City station.
Now I did find a few documents about that in your collection regarding that, with the pictures. Some of them were contact sheets of people visiting the embassy as such, and also that particular person that was passed off as Oswald going into the embassy, that guy, you're more inclined to call him a commie than anything else. This guy looks Russian and bulky, but there was like also a document where basically several photos of this guy. So it wasn't just one photo. There was about half a dozen photos of him in there, and of course there was talk about the functionality of that equipment. So I'd say there's a fair bit regarding photographic and filming surveillance in Mexico City of the embassy itself, the Cuban embassy itself. It's, you know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's incredible the amount of paperwork there is available with regards to Mexico City. It's just, you know, the Laredo chapter, but also just the visit to the consulate as such.
I mean, that's a bit that always interested me, was how did Oswald get in, how did he get out? You know, it's very simple, except it becomes a very complicated story. Nobody can get the story right. Nobody.
Well, I can get it right in one sentence. It didn't happen. How about that? Yeah. That's why they couldn't get the story right. Yeah, well, it's just that because also it comes from different. But you know what? It's no different than what I deal with when they talk about something that happened, and then you get 4 or 5 different people involved, and all of them give a different twist, and it gets to a point where it goes, but that doesn't make any sense. You're not on one line with the story with each other. The Heidel ID is the best example of all. You know, nobody can come with a concrete story and say this is how it happened. You know, on the 22nd, because there is no evidence on the 22nd that there was a Heidel ID. There's nothing. And the people that were talking about it were only talking about it later, weeks, months later actually, about it, that they found the document as such. And they repeated that rubbish during the HSCA. But that's a brilliant example that, you know, this doesn't just happen with the agency. It happens locally in Dallas, and it happens everywhere, basically.
This is a page on, obviously there must be a folder at some point, but the folder's not available, on someone called Edward K Broadfield, which is a pseudonym, CIA pseudonym. That's actually Mario Broad, who was James Angleton's special
Assistant?
vest pocket agent.
Really?
Yeah, so the folder, I suppose that they would say they wouldn't release it because it was the resume of his employment with the agency and efforts to straighten out his tax delinquencies. He was a special project group deep cover staff agent, terminated in 1961.
Right in the middle of it.
That's interesting, because if he was terminated in 61,
it's right in the middle.
he was still working. He was still working much later, so he must have been off the books with Angleton post 61. Oh, I never knew. See, when you look at these old things, there you go.
I know. Yeah, happens to me too. You just overlook it or just didn't see it at first. And, yeah.
A guy called Edwin A. Brubaker, who was a naval officer, reported to the Church Committee that there were attempts during the Bay of Pigs period to shoot Castro. Interesting, because it gives a name, and it was a naval officer. So.
But I've lost count with all the Castro attempts in general.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And yet he's still, he ran the country for what, 60 years practically.
This was about Augusta Trueba, who was a Spanish CIA agent that was, he'd been in Russia, and he married a Russian girl whose name was familiar to us, and that was Rosa Aganova. There's a person with the same name is in contact with Oswald. So I think there was concern in the Office of Security that she could have been the same person at one stage. This just says Chireba's polygraph in May 60, agency polygraph, reflected that he was withholding information regarding helping or working for the Russian intelligence services and being sent by the Russian intelligence services to Spain, signing an agreement with to work for the Russian intelligence services. Oh no, it was Rosa Kuznetsova. That's right, Rosa, not the Aganova, it was the other one, Rosa Kuznetsova. So that's one that Oswald supposedly met. Let's have a look. It's a note from me to the person in charge of JFK, Martha Murphy. Dear Martha, Marty helped me yesterday but could not locate the HSCA segregated CIA collection staff notes. He thought they might have been assimilated into the larger CIA HSCA segregated collection. I said I would bring in the 2003 finding aid and show it to him, where the 36 boxes are listed. If you can locate them, I would like to review boxes 1 through 12. I would be grateful if you could add these to the cart that Marty used yesterday.
Did you get to see them?
Yeah. But the archivist didn't. I have some sympathy because it's a big collection to manage. But anyway, I quite like Marty. He was quite a nice guy. You know. I think he had a few problems with some of my requests.
How could he?
That's what you can read that one out. That's me making my request.
JFK. This is Thursday, November the 10th, 9 a.m. Can I speak to someone regarding records?
Answer.
Mr. Blunt, I'm afraid I don't have time today and speak with you. I'll try on Monday. You can also put your question in writing and we can log it with the... I can't read that. We're stretched very thin. Martha Murphy.
Yeah.
What does that word say?
So there you go. There was a lot of that. A lot of that went on.
But you'd become... Those notes are from the time that you'd become part of the furniture, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, how did that go back then? Did you just stand there at 9 o'clock at the door waiting to get in, and then what? Stay there till 5 o'clock sharp till they shut shop, or?
Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Tuesdays and Thursdays were 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night.
Oh.
So they were long days.
Oh.
And they actually opened on Saturdays then.
Really?
So
6 days a week?
Yeah.
You must have been in Valhalla.
Yeah. You could spend a lot of time there.
How awesome. I'm jealous. A lot of people don't understand this, but that's the only way how you get the knowledge. I mean,
back in the 90s, of course, you could look at the evidence.
Oh, the physical evidence, yeah.
The original physical evidence.
Yeah, the handgun and the rifle and this,
look at
that,
everything.
Yeah. And now you have to have a really good reason if you.
Yeah, that was Trudy Huskamp Peterson brought that in. Photographs would do. Oh, here's one. FBI number 62-109060-3215X. That's J. Edgar Hoover's screwed up deposition to the Warren Commission, which they kept. It's in the files, where he says that Jack Ruby was never an informant for the FBI. And of course he was.
Yeah, it was.
He was
A liar.
So that's quite funny, that one.
Yeah, it is.
The Kramer photo, 62-109060-3573. 62-109060-3130 is the Dallas Police Department files on J.D. Tippit. So
I think there's a few people that will be interested in that.
So that's an FBI file 62-109060-3130.
I know a few people will be interested in that.
62-109060 EBF 3563 3599. EBF is enclosure behind the files. It's actually in box 30, and that's a lot of photographs of Jack Ruby's girls. They used to work for him. I think I got that for Ian, if I remember rightly.
Really?
Ian Riggs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one. It's box 13, record group 541, so that's the ARB, Laura Denk files, and it's Jeremy Gunn to David Marwell. The existing MBR guidelines will allow us to remove from detailed consideration those records or files that truly have no apparent relevance to the assassination. Nevertheless, a significant number of files in the segregated collection, CIA segregated collection, contain records that do at least shed some light on issues that the HSCA explored and are potentially relevant to the assassination of President Kennedy. So it's like, well, they are NBR, but they're not NBR. So it's an interesting...
That's right, make up your mind.
An interesting one. Yep. It's an interesting...
Now, of course, when that old stuff comes back at you, you know, that's with anything, but it does give you like...
Yeah, this is discussion between Jeremy Gunn and David Marwell. No belief relevance on CIA sources living outside the US. Protect for 10 years and protect some until 2017.
Aha.
So these are CIA sources. So there's another category of MBR to 2017. Well, some of these people may still be alive, so they're still protecting them. So that's why those people will still be MBR, still be no belief relevance, because you've got to protect. You got to protect them. Oh God, that's a long one. It's about photographing license plates in Mexico City. I don't want to bore people to death with that one.
I've got to ask you a quick question. It's been on my mind for some time. What's the difference in the CIA between Soviet Russia 6 and Soviet Russia 9? What is the difference? There's two groups apparently, SR6 and SR9, or is it?
No, it goes right. It goes SR1, 2, 3,
Really?
4, 5, 6.
Really?
I don't know where 7 is, or 8.
So they all have
they
their own
must exist.
compartment.
SR9 and SR10, yeah.
So they're all their
SR10
own.
is Soviet Russia 10. Back then was the legal travelers program.
Right.
So that was that.
Okay, I get it.
SR9 was Soviet internal operations. That was very sensitive. That was a very small section of 6 people. Not a lot of people there. Very heavily compartmentalized.
So each number actually represents a compartment on Soviet Russia.
Then you have SRCI, which is Soviet Russia counterintelligence.
Understood.
That was Pete Bagley's
Right.
stuff. SR6 was realities, what they call Soviet realities. That's the people that look at their, they look at all the stuff, the bits and pieces. They're like, they're looking at, anything that's coming out of the Soviet Union. Could be bus tickets, train tickets, train timetables, also anything that comes out. They're interested in anybody that comes back. They're interested in interviewing anybody that comes back from the Soviet Union, except Oswald. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And the other ones are really regional. I forget which way round it goes. I think SR4 Scandinavia, and then there's like Near East, and I lose track of them. But they're geographic areas. The first one's the geographic areas.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good to know.
Yeah. So. These are really ancient. I remember these. These go back to 97, I think. These go back 24 years. Somebody called John Rector must have been interviewed by the FBI. Rector, I think, was something to do with Jack Ruby. So that was 62-1090-060-7738. Then there was what they call a chrono file. Some numbers I never ever got into, which is HSA DIA 111-1001-1048. Early FBI file number. I think it must be Ruby. FBI case file 44-24016-429. These must have been a request for the HSCA looking for specifics. Okay, I got it.
Well, what I will do is scan all this in one document, and then in the description of this video they can download it and can compare it as such.
Oh, this was Betty Douthit's address book. She got an address book, one of Ruby's address books.
Yeah.
That's right. So this is to do with that.
She
These are all the
found it.
people they tried to locate that were in that address book. A lot got tax stuff, which is postponed in full. Gives all the numbers, though.
About?
Gives all the numbers.
Mm. Yeah, these are more like scribbles than like, I mean, that's what I thought. And I copied this in a couple of weeks back. But in the archive, just while Malcolm's looking, in the archive there are a couple of folders. One of them is Malcolm Blunt inside, in front of the researchers folders, and also there's a Malcolm Blunt folder in NARA, in the NARA folder, because of course Malcolm received and sent, of course, quite a few notes and letters back and forth, or faxed them as such from England before he go on a trip to the States. And of course there are loads of notes as such, handwritten notes that Malcolm just went through, that are around, that need deeper investigating. I'll try and see if I can get some more for next time to get them explained what's what, because we just showed maybe one little folder, but I can give you at least 15 or 20 folders with just notes. So you know, these are a really good piece of work with regards to what was happening back in the day, in the second half of the 90s as such, while Malcolm was at NARA, and you know, translate as such. And also, of course, some of the numbers can be easily compared with, has it been released or has it not been released. And you know, it would make it, of course, a lot more interesting if it hasn't been released, because they can be added to the list as such of documents that need to come out. And the good thing about it is that Malcolm writes about it, and what its subject matter is, and so forth, you know. So, and that's another good thing about the archive itself. A lot of the riff sheets that I've got, which are not online, they could easily be sent to archives and say, listen, this document is not there yet, here's the riff sheet, so cough it up. As such, it would make it it makes it a lot easier of sourcing these so-called documents. So happy hunting. Right, I see you've got a folder.
Yeah, I was looking, you know, I've been going through more in the one remaining filing cabinet.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that always bugged me, you know, I've got lots of files on Richard Snyder, you know, the
Moscow embassy, yeah.
The Foreign Service officer
Yeah.
was maybe something else. And
Was DOS, but probably CIA. Yeah.
yeah, but they, you know, they give it away. They give it away, but people don't understand what they're looking at, I don't think. This was from the Office of Legislative Counsel inside the CIA.
Right.
And
Please continue.
I want people to understand what this means. This is a letter by Lyle Miller to G. Robert Blakey. It says, "Dear Professor Blakey, in your letter of the 19th of January 1978, you asked that this agency release one Richard E. Snyder for any obligation of secrecy which he may owe to this agency, in order that he may make a full response to questions associated with your investigation." Second paragraph, Mr. Snyder was employed by this agency for approximately 1 year in the 1949-1950 time frame. Then in the 1971-1975 time frame, he was associated with the Joint Publications Research Service, an organization sponsored by this agency. At the time of his employment with the agency, Mr. Snyder executed a secrecy agreement. Paragraph 3. We note that the period of Mr. Snyder's employment with this agency considerably predates the time period of interest to the committee's investigation. Given this disparity in time periods, it would seem that Mr. Snyder can be fully responsive to your inquiries without being released from the terms of his secrecy agreement with this agency. Accordingly, the agency considers that Mr. Snyder is still bound by the terms of this agreement. So we get Richard Snyder's testimony, and we know he's going to adhere to his agency oath, which means he can lie under oath. He can lie under oath. There it is. Blakey accepted that. G. Robert Blakey accepted that. That's disgusting.
That's a whopper of a document.
That's disgusting.
That is a real cool document. Yeah.
I mean, did you get it? Did you get it? You see? All these other people, you know, where it says here, were being released from their CIA agreement. They're being released from their CIA agreement, right?
Yeah.
So they can testify. They can testify. Yeah. And when they testify, they have to tell the truth. Because they're released from their agency agreement. He wasn't. He has to adhere to his oath. And his oath.
You mentioned
the
this
agency
before in part, yeah.
comes first. So when he's under oath to the HSCA, what are you going to get? That's what you're going to get.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's what you're going to get.
Yeah. It's what we call a whopper of a document.
Yeah, and then of course, you know, the one that always saddens me is the customs one.
Yeah.
Wendell Roach down in New Orleans, and he's saying December the 3rd, 1975, he tells the church committee investigator, I've been waiting 12 years to talk to someone about this. Desire to cooperate fully, willing to come to DC at our convenience. And then
I remember that.
We get a bit further down the line, and he's obviously been got at because when he goes to the debrief at U.S. immigration in Washington D.C., it's like he suddenly loses his memory. I have a hazy recollection. I cannot remember. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Very sad. Very sad. As these events took place some 12 years ago, it's extremely difficult to recall to memory. And I so indicated to these gentlemen. That's the problem. You know, I suppose when you got, I don't know how old he was, but when you got a family and, or maybe he was coming up to retirement.
They get to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
They get to you.
Absolutely.
I mean, if they don't get to you, then you're like maybe some lone soul who lives in a cabin in the woods and doesn't have any family. Then perhaps, but then of course there'll be a team waiting in the forest for you. But no, they'll get to you, you know, one way or another.
Yeah.
Oh, and if they can't, they throw a bag of money at you. Just
and you know, another thing I came across I loved actually when I reread it again was Victor Marchetti's.
I think I've got this book.
I think it was his court deposition he was talking about. So he's talking about Nosenko, and he said, and then he says, you know, but prior to Nosenko, he's talking about the fact that there were CIA was going to do, you know, like a limited hangout. They were going to give up some names, but then it decided to use Nosenko. So John Hart comes in and talks about Nosenko. I mean, obviously Nosenko is important within the context of the Kennedy assassination. But he said he had no connection with him, and obviously we had no connection with the JFK assassination. And then he spent the whole afternoon telling this horror story about how CIA, in violation of all humanitarian ideals and American standards, had thrown Nosenko, upon his defection, into a privately built prison for him that they constructed as a safe house in Northern Virginia, and held him under hostile interrogation for years, and all kinds of terrible things. And the committee and everybody just sat there in amazement, and they listened to this terrible, terrible story, as I did. And as I listened to it on public radio that afternoon, after he got finished telling this story, he said, "We're not going to do this kind of thing anymore. And I've seen to it, and we have rehabilitated Nosenko," and so forth in this story. And this is Marchetti. Marchetti says, and I sat there wondering to myself, what the hell does this have to do with the Kennedy assassination? And why? What is the connection? Question mark. And I couldn't imagine what the connection was. But it occurred to me later that this was the niftiest of the nifty limited hangouts. They admit to doing something wrong, but the something wrong they are submitting to having done wrong had nothing to do with Kennedy. The Kennedy assassination. They said they're not going to do it again, and it worked beautifully. Very, very
And
clear.
they get away with it.
And the committee and everybody else was just fascinated with the story and forgot what they were doing up there. And then somebody else, a lawyer obviously asked him a question. He said, so your theory is that instead of hanging out Hunt, they hung out their own misconduct in the Nosenko affair to divert the committee's attention to some role they had in the Kennedy assassination. Marchetti, yes. Let's not get into it any further. Yes. Let's not get into this any further. Rather, we'll tell you the story. I think he got it right. It was a massive diversion. Massive diversion. You know.
But it's also, it was too close to the Kennedy assassination. And it happened in '63, and you've got all this stuff happening between 12 and 15 years later. You know, that's really close. I mean, the distance between 9/11 and now is bigger than what you're just describing as such. A dozen years after the fact, and people starting to talk freely as such. I bet they had to plug a ton of holes, basically.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, certainly people like, Huff, that went on that post-assassination investigation, which everybody got amnesia about. And then, of course, the Wilcott allegations, where everybody got amnesia again. The Denisea stuff on a debrief goes nowhere that you can find. There's no interviews in the files. I mean, it's just like, it's endless. what you have to cope with. You can only see it happen. You can see it happening. You can definitely see it happening.
Yeah. Okay, let's have a quick break. Okay, so we're back. Please continue, Malcolm.
So I'm looking at a document which is part from the Historical Review Project, Office of Information Management. And we're talking about various files. In this document, which is dated the 25th of February 2003. Oh, that's a release date. So it's the 20th of August 98. And they're talking about the Angleton files. So a lot of people are interested in Angleton files.
Everybody's got a hard on for Angleton, yeah.
So the files that George Calaris mentions in Tom Mangold's book were incorporated with the files of the counterintelligence staff per a memorandum dated 1976-1979. The counterintelligence files were reviewed and incorporated into the Director of Operation record system. Items that were duplicates or not worthy of retention were destroyed. The memos described the file collection and the process that was followed. Because the files that were once known as Angleton's have been dispersed within the Directorate of Operation Records, they are no longer identifiable as a collection. So people often said to me, you know,
that's a good way of
what happened to
reasoning.
Angleton's records? Well, there you go. That's what they say. So may be true, may not be true. Who knows? And some interesting ones. There's a thing called inside CIA called AINs. That's an agency identifier. Agency identifier identity number. So, and that's on all sorts of people. People that had 201s, you know, all sorts of people, sources, you name it, anything. So it's a big collection. The AIN numbers, AIN numbers, and these are the AIN numbers within the security office. So they're security records, CIA security records. Sergio Arcacha-Smith's files, security files, were destroyed in 1994.
Really?
Eusebio Ascu's files were also destroyed in 1994.
But this is all after the JFK Act.
Yeah. Earl Cabell,
Yeah.
his security office files were destroyed 1980 and 1981. June Cobb's security files were destroyed in 1994. So,
How can that be done? I mean, the 80s I can understand, but the stuff in 94, that's 2 years after the JFK Act. So what, these files are NBRs, or we can destroy the dossier?
they certainly, they weren't held to account as far as I could say. I don't see the review board going after them. But they actually sent them this stuff.
And this is
very late.
Yeah.
They did send it late, so they may not have seen this. But, you know, people like, you know, for Jeff Morley, Juan Manuel Salvat Roque, his files were destroyed 1980, 1981. Richard Snyder, his security files were destroyed, get this, 3rd of June 1995.
And that's when the ARB is fully active already at that time.
Frank Sturgis, his files were destroyed 1980-81. And the second lot of Sturgis' files were destroyed in 1994. Antonio Veciano's security files were destroyed in 1994.
And this is all when the ARB is kicking off.
These were security, yeah, sure.
But that's not coincidence.
It just doesn't. It's relentless, the destruction of records, because this one is coming from the Departments of Justice, and then you go through a whole list of names. It is DOJ files. People, they're interested in the organised crime stuff, that angle. But also, actually, I noticed that they've got Alaman here, Cuban. His file was destroyed January 93. Ed Becker's files were destroyed October 92. Robert F. Kennedy's records, 46-62975, destroyed April 93. Nefora Pecora, who was a big suspect on an organised crime angle, he had a file 46-32-343, that's missing. 51, Alan Dorfman, who was very close to Ruby, his file's missing. 51-16-508, Jimmy Hoffa, missing. 51-23-432, Jimmy Hoffa, missing.
You don't miss files like that. Rubbish.
Edward Grady Partin, 51-58-92, destroyed, 1980. Santo Trafficante, 80-017-17, missing. Belletti, that was a wiretapping thing, 82-18-149, missing. Hoffa, another Hoffa file, missing. 84 series referencing R.F. Kennedy, destroyed. 95-01750, R.F. Kennedy, destroyed, July 91. 123-3712, Hoffa, destroyed, 492. 123-370, Hoffa, destroyed, 193. 123-1713, Carlos Marcello, destroyed, January 93. Another Rosselli file, 123-391, destroyed, July 92. Another Rosselli file, 123-126-191, missing. 123-192, Santo Trafficante, cannot locate. Big different though. Dave Yaras, connected to Ruby. 123-23-1064, destroyed, October 96. And then on and on and on. Another R.F. Kennedy one, 146-200-3627, destroyed, October 91. 156-4633, Hoffa, destroyed, 792. Alaman, destroyed, 792. It's just endless. And that's another agency. More destroyed material, more missing material. And people say to us, "Oh, we would have found something a long time ago." Yeah, right. We would have found stuff a long time ago.
If they kept the paperwork intact.
If they kept everything intact.
Those people that say that they talk out of ignorance. They don't have a clue.
Yeah. So that was that one. I think this was. We were talking earlier on about the trip to Oswald's trip, and this is some of the cable traffic from London. Quite important the way it's phrased. The way that CIA writes the language it uses is
The lingo.
the lingo.
Yeah.
It's like, you know. So, 1, no traces on Oswald in Jaguar. Jaguar is London, that's UK. So when you see Jaguars, that's what that means.
Jaguar.
Jaguar, yeah. Special branch.
Right.
Special branch. Or the Criminal Records Office. However, traffic index shows that Oswald arrived in Southampton, 9th of October 59, claiming in his landing card he had no fixed address, but planned to remain in the UK for 1 week for vacation, before going on to some school in Switzerland. However,
Albert Schweitzer.
However, he left London the next day, on the 10th of October, by air for Helsinki. Well, how did he get there? And then it doesn't explain that at all. It just says, it just goes on to say, there's no record on it on a return from the USSR to US that he passed through UK. So that's just left on there. That's just like, you know, it's just like a passing comment. But when we get to July 64, we get quite interesting bits of minutiae, I would call them. So it's June the 6th, 64. I'm looking at this document, which is an action change. So it means it's handing over from the Chief of Western Hemisphere to the Chief of Soviet Russia. So it goes from John Whitten to Stuart Duncan in passing. I know Stuart Duncan. He worked for Pete Buckley actually, Stuart. So and it's been categorised as VR. VR means vital record. It means it's a record that should never be destroyed. So it's just a very simple transfer of responsibility. So that's what that is.
Huh.
But it's interesting that it's coming from Helsinki, which is
From the Finns.
from the CIA station in Helsinki. So we go 30th of June. Stuart Duncan's now on the case, and it's to London. The Warren Commission wishes to determine Lee Oswald's arrival time in Helsinki. Can you determine Oswald's departure time for London on the 10th of October 1959? If not, what flights could he have taken to Helsinki on that date?
That wouldn't be too difficult to ascertain.
God, you wouldn't think so, would you?
Especially in that era. You know, it's not like today, like we got 6 or 8 flights to Europe a day, but you know.
It's passed around at a high level, really high level. It goes from Cordelia Hood at SRCI. It goes to the Deputy Chief of Soviet Russia, Sid Stein. It goes to Counterintelligence Research and Analysis, and it goes to Western Europe Chief Ted Walsh. So it's passed around at a high level. So that's the sort of stuff you get. Some of this stuff is like, you can't sort of say it in just a few words. It's one of these things that like takes a lot of getting through.
Yeah, what I'm doing is just one segment, but you're looking at I don't know how many different segments, because you're looking at the Russia thing.
Yeah.
You're looking at the people inside the agency. You're looking at you know, it can go on as such, and the depth of it, and trying to paint a picture, a never-ending picture, no doubt. But
well, you know, one of the things I've got, and I was wondering whether you wanted it or not.
what is it?
It's the records of James Saxon.
James?
Saxon, the comptroller of currency, that JFK appointed to take on the Federal Reserve. In other words, to be his man. Kennedy wanted his own economic policy, and Saxon was the guy. He resurrected a dead and buried arm of government, the comptroller of the currency,
Right.
and that's what Saxon became.
How many files have you got?
Well, it's quite a lot of stuff.
Really?
But I got it sent to me in digital form by the Kennedy Library, so I could send that straight to you.
Yeah?
That's the one easy thing you get.
That's the easiest
from
thing.
me. That's
Oh well.
I got it. It's, you know,
You know
thinking like
The fact that you've got it.
I'd work on it, but the only good thing for me is it did absolutely convince me that Kennedy was really taking on major forces in America. The Federal Reserve is some, you know, there's this old canard, don't mess with the Fed. You know, JFK was messing with the Fed. You know, you're dealing with really, you know, taking away power from the Federal Reserve is like really, really tough stuff. This is a note which Saxon was. I mean, why did JFK appoint Douglas Dillon as Treasury Secretary? But I suppose he had to. He had to put hawks in. You know, people that were going to be difficult for him. He had to put some of those people in his cabinet, in a way. But Dillon was in such a sensitive position. Doug Dillon. And he was the obstructor. Of all the people that were obstructing Saxon, it was Doug Dillon. And Saxon's writing, this is after Kennedy's assassination, of course. He can't do anything about it. He's just got to sit there and take it. But he writes to Doug Dillon, I regret exceedingly your decision not to send forward to the Budget Bureau and to Congress the following bills. A bill to place in the Comptroller of Currency authority over foreign banking and financing corporations. A bill to clarify the requirements of reports and condition of national banks. That's very important.
Yeah.
3, a bill to remove the power of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System to examine national banks.
I bet they're happy with that.
Now, you see, what that did, what Kennedy was striving for, the power over the national banks, there was 4,600 banks, right, controlled by the Fed.
Yeah.
So Kennedy gets those removed from the Fed to the Comptroller's office, Comptroller of Currency. He's then got control of his money supply, just for a get-go, just for a starter.
That's worse. That document is much stronger than any so-called I'm going to splinter the CIA in 1,000 pieces, which was just words being said. And here you got something that's just on paper.
Yeah. As you know, these bills have been the subject of oral and written adverse comment from the Federal Reserve to various people in the Treasury. What I particularly regret, however, is the uniform disposition of your staff people to subordinate or dismiss the views of this office. This is Kennedy's office. This is the office that Kennedy resurrected. God, if in certain cases our views are considered at all, whenever the Federal Reserve or the Budget Bureau take contrary or different positions to ours, considerations such as accorded to Mr. Berlin motivated your negative decision in the case of these 3 bills. They do not seem to have any substantial effect on the other agencies or on treatment of their views by your staff people. Witness the Budget Bureau has requested the Treasury to include in its report to the Congress on Malta's bill prohibiting lease financing by national banks. The differing views of the FDIC, the Federal Reserve and the Budget Bureau itself, and the favourable response of Mr. Benning to this request. The present legislative arrangements affecting this office can hardly be deemed to be satisfactory, and they certainly cannot be characterised as evidence of the efficient conduct of government. The 3 bills in question, these are Kennedy's bills, lay around the various offices of your staff people, that's Dylan, and the Budget Bureau for months and months. And as you know, this is not unusual treatment for the proposals we make from Kennedy's office. These difficulties may persist so long as one bank regulatory agency is treated as being in a subordinate position in the official government hierarchy. That's a stinger of a letter.
Yeah.
You know.
I'll have that. That's beautiful. May 64.
But you'll see the when I send you the stuff on Saxon, it's you know, all the stuff that people talk about printing a currency outside. I used to believe that at one stage, you know, that JFK was going to get the currency, take away the power of printing the currency from the Federal Reserve and give it to the Treasury. It's not that at all. It's control of his monetary policy, his economic policy. That's what Kennedy wanted. And he wasn't getting it as long as the Fed were in charge. So if you take away the national banks from the control of the Fed, he gets his
money.
But he also gets a very nasty enemy in the process. Bad people. You know, because of the Fed, its construction is really, it's a cartel of private banks. You know, and these guys will kill their own mother.
Oh, no.
You know?
Yeah, these aren't very pleasant people.
No.
It makes an agent of the CIA look like a little kindergarten cop.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difficulty. You know, I have here, I think I have all sorts of stuff here. This is like, well, I had a piece on Helms, which I thought was quite
Uncle
good.
Richard.
Richard Helms. I don't know where I got this from. I got it from the Rockefeller Commission file. Oh, God. You know, Richard Helms had a great secretary that was really his alter ego. You know, if anything, she was worse than he was. This was his secretary, Elizabeth Dunleavy, very formidable lady inside CIA, Mrs. Dunleavy. And I'll give you just a little bit. March the 13th, 1975. I requested that this is coming from the Rockefeller Commission, I guess. Oh, it's like 75. This must have been a church committee. Oh no, it may have been a Rockcom. Okay, I got it. We signed it.
Yeah, they all overlap each other. Eh?
Yeah. Who's doing it? I was trying to find who's that. Oh, Manfredi. Yeah, that's Rockefeller Commission. So it's quite a long document which goes into it's trying to explain what Richard Helms left behind. Not much, not much. And it says. Subject, examination of a portion of the records of Richard Helms. On March the 13th, 1975, I requested that Hank Noach locate and make available for the staff's inspection all of the following documents maintained by Richard Helms or his secretary during the period between his appointment as DDP and the date of his separation from the agency. Desk calendars, phone logs, appointment logs, diaries, chronological correspondence files, tape recordings of meetings, phone conversations, as well as any transcriptions thereof, and file memorandums. On the day I presented my request, Noach explained that at the time of his departure from the agency, Helms tidied up his personal files, and that a substantial amount of material may have been destroyed.
Well, go figure.
Noach believes that most of the tape recordings of the DCI phone conversations and meetings in his office were among the items destroyed.
Of course.
He added that the agency has no record of what was destroyed, but that the most productive source of that information would be Elizabeth C. Dunleavy, who was Helm's secretary at the time, and who was now retired from the agency. Noach stated he would make every effort to locate all of the documents in the above categories which are still within the custody of the agency. So there you go. Yeah. Amazing. Just amazing. They're trying to make sense of it, of Helm's desk calendars. And it says, however, before the Senate Select Committee on Presidential Campaign Activities, Mrs. Dunleavy testified that she destroyed his calendars around the time of his departure for the agency. It's just like, it's endless. It's endless. Destruction, destruction, destruction. Just amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, I find Helms's role most interesting when it comes to correspondence with the Warren Commission, and where there's barely a word mentioned about
I sent you that, didn't I, about Paul Cook? I think I did it a long time ago.
the cameraman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some of it.
That's probably the second page that was missing.
Gotcha. Alright, good. Probably not alive anymore, but it's definitely... The ARB has the film. They got the film.
They did?
Yeah. Because in the 90s it was released, and it was... what's his name who wrote that book on all the photographers? He's alone, not Trask, Richard Trask. And he was talking about it back then on the History Channel or something, some affiliate or something like that, back in '96. And that's when the Cook film was shown, and that's when the copy was handed over to the ARB. So it's in the ARB collection, just like they did with the Allier film. But I actually need to get in there and get digital copies of these films. Because that would help a lot, because Cook shot a lot of footage in front of the Texas School Book Depository after the assassination. So all that movement, all these people, there's a sequence he shot with Carolyn Arnold. They are all standing with their back against the Texas School Book Depository, which is between the corner of the building, the southeast corner of the building, and the front entrance. They're all standing there, and they're basically moved on by the Dallas police as such, and everybody just walks away, because it's at the time basically when actually the DPD is securing the area around the TSBD and told people to move on as such. That bit is captured really well by Cook. So from all the filmmakers who were there that day, he's got probably the best material when it comes to what was happening, like the aftermath of the assassination as such. And you see Carolyn Arnold and a couple of other women moving away, and I see Roy Edward Lewis in that segment as well. So yeah, I should go to NARA and request a film, and the same goes for the Allier film, whatever he put together as such. We were talking about him the other day at Project JFK about it, because people were trying to find out whether he's still alive. And if he is, they suspect him to be alive, but if he is, he's probably in a care home and he's in his early 90s, you know. I mean, it's a miracle that some of these people still are here, still you know.
Around.
You know, because, I mean, look at it, it's 58 years ago, and they're still around. And this is also the only group you basically can still talk to is the people that were in their late teens, early 20s, basically, and that's it, basically, you know. Anyone that was older than, say, 30, it's not very likely they're still around as such. Although, unless you're Elmer Boyd, who was Will Fritz's, one of his detectives as such. And guess this, I went through the documents this week, and then I came across a document that said, where they asked Will Fritz whether the rally call actually happened. And what did Will Fritz say? Didn't happen. Doesn't even have records to support it as such. And I was like, well, I normally don't believe Will Fritz, but this time I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. As such.
You believe him when you want to believe him.
And I was like, okay, hold on a minute. You know, I slag him off with everything I can, but then I just go, well, if Will Fritz says so, then on top of everything else, what I figured out from that so-called call, you know, there's not one iota true of it. There's nothing that's true of that whole matter. But yeah, I thought that was quite a surprise when I found that document, when they managed to basically able to ask him as such, because most of the time Fritz is incredibly vague. Oh, I'll have to check up on that. I have no recollection. This, that, and the other. When it comes to Roger Craig, where it comes to just all these little matters. What's his name? Who showed up in the evening of the 22nd? He had a strip bar and he had a gun store, something like that. And they were next to each other, and he was running them both. And Harold McDermott, I think is his name, and he was basically called in to talk about the Carcano rifle because they didn't recognize it as such, and they didn't know anything about it. So they called him in, and he came, and he said two things. Number one, he said, in the first interview he did, he said he never saw Oswald. He went past the office of robbery and homicide, but he didn't see Oswald. And then this HSCA interview comes up, and he says, "Oh yeah, I saw Oswald 3 times." And I thought, that's rubbish, because, you know, why would you say that now, 13 years after the date? And then on top of that, he knew Ruby, and he said that he was in the elevator because he had his car parked in such a way that they couldn't get in, blah blah blah. So they said, "Can you please go downstairs to the parking garage and get rid of your car, because we can't move around there." Okay, so he went back in the elevator to go down to the basement in the parking garage where Ruby shot Oswald, and he saw, this is on the 22nd, and he saw Ruby in the elevator with him, and they were talking, and there were I think the Lieutenant Baker was with them and somebody else, and they asked Fritz about that, and he just plays dumb. He just plays dumb, because the second they go like, well, that guy met Ruby in the elevator, and your lieutenant is there, and another detective, and they didn't chase that, obviously, the Warren Commission being the Warren Commission. So, and then Fritz goes, "Let me get back at you." And this is what he does, and many times he just basically professes like, "I don't know, I was inside, blah 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 blah, let me get back to you," and he never does, because he doesn't have to, and so forth. But yeah,
That's a great technique.
it's very good. Is it with sly old fucks, Will Fritz?
It's like you know, Dulles, when you look through the Warren Commission testimony of various people, you know, if it looks anything like difficult, then he'll call a lunch break. He'll call a halt for some reason. He's very. I mean, people say he was like a bumbling old fool. He certainly was a very sharp guy.
It's just Machiavelli
Very sharp.
in a different shape or form. That's what it
The
is.
way he operated.
Everything
was
is guessable, like in the sense like I don't believe you. You've got an agenda, one way or another. There's an agenda. But hey, you don't make it to boss of the spooks, not by being a nice guy, innit? Huh?
I don't know if we, we should like hit a bit, because I think I talked to Joe Backus about this at various times and to other people, I tried to talk to Jeff Meek about it this week. NARA working papers are very disturbing, really, and they have to be of interest to you. NARA working papers, we need an index.
Oh, that's what you told me last time. Yes.
We need an index of the NARA working papers. I mean, this was kept for 40 years, and I wrote on it why, question mark. It was released by NARA in 10th of May 2004. But you see, the archivist writes on here, he got consent from CIA to release this. Well, what are CIA hanging on to that for 40 years? You see. I mean, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, I've seen this stuff before.
But a lot of names in here.
But what we need, what we do need, is an accounting of what they got. What have they got as working papers? Because it seems to be anything. It can be a Secret Service advance report on stuff. It could be literally anything.
I'm just going to check the ref numbers quick. See if these documents are actually online. Well, the second one is offline, which is the DOS White House Situation Room papers on Oswald's trip to Mexico and Alvarado Ugarte, Gilberto Alvarado Ugarte trip is also mentioned in this. And the first one, which you just talked about, I bet it's not online either. It's the type of stuff they want to keep off. Again, not online. Both of them are.
So that, for you and other people that are interested in the early stuff, this is very important, because most of what they were withdrawing from the Warren Commission files, and I still don't have any explanation from the National Archives as to why they're doing this. Why are they withdrawing this stuff, and labeling stuff as working papers? Obviously, CIA has an interest in that document because the archivist wrote it on the page. That's not my writing. That's James Mathis's writing, the archivist, on the front page. Yeah. So
I think.
I just wonder, whether you're going to get. If we could get an accounting of that stuff from the National Archives, from NARA, an index of their working papers, where you're going to find witness statements, testimony, stuff that would be of interest to you when you look back to the early days.
Yes.
Because they've been burying it for years. They have a review every so often, but you know, nobody's pushing them to do a review. They do a review, you know. I think it's worth, you know, that's worth pursuing because really we don't even have to, you know, there should be no, there shouldn't be a problem with regard to this release, this 2017 release. You know, they need to give a full accounting, a full explanation of what they're doing with these working papers. What are they? Where's the index? How many times have they reviewed? You know, and we're not seeing it.
I think we need to mail bomb NARA. That's what.
We need to see it.
I just mail them continuously.
The only explanation I got was from a very nice archivist there that I got on with well, Steve Hamilton, and Steve said to me that when I asked him about working papers, he said they're working papers, something like that. And I said, well, he said, well, what does that mean? And he just smiled at me and he said, they're exempt from FOIA. They're exempt from FOIA.
Is that
So
now?
you can't FOIA this stuff.
Yeah. And is that the same with the ranking papers as such or not? Are they working papers?
No,
Regard?
I think no. I think no. I think that's different. But when I think about it, I think, you know, the ranking papers, I do remember there were quite a lot of gaps. There were quite a lot of folders that should have had documents in, didn't have documents in. But, so I would imagine that CIA, the agency, probably stripped out a few. You know, they put screeners in and they took stuff out. They were withdrawn.
See, this is what the average person, well, let alone JFK researcher, doesn't have a clue about. I mean, I was clueless a few years ago. But you're pointing in so many directions, so many divisions, departments, whatever you want to call it, and add on top that besides these so-called agencies, there's all these commissions and committees that investigated all this stuff. So that multiplies everything by God knows how much. On top of that, I'm surprised by how much has come out, but I'm even more surprised by how much was actually hidden. Therefore, you get an even bigger picture, like a better picture of actually how much has been destroyed and disappeared and lost, or whatever you want to call it, whatever euphemism people want to use as such. Yeah. But it's just so big and so much, and it's
beyond most people. It's beyond most people.
Yeah.
I mean, you can you know, I mean, Joe Backus, you know, God bless him, I think he has the right focus, the right mind, and the right way to do things. But if you did it Joe's way, you wouldn't get anything, because you're down to you're so slowed down.
That's true.
You know,
no, I really I knew that with him. I had that
the other
feeling.
side of it is, as you know, it can be chaotic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it is chaotic in a way. It is chaotic.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand what you said about Joe, and it's totally true on every aspect. He's very meticulous when it comes to that.
He is.
And I think that's very good. That's a very good thing. But yeah, at the same time, it's also because when I'm copying, I'm going, but mate, I need to scan this in and I need to move on to the next folder, and then I'll worry about stuff like that. It's, you know, I put a system together where I just basically said, right, scan it, put it all together, check the PDF, put the name on it, organization, date, whatever, people involved, and upload it and file it, because that was the system basically created as such. And if you then come in and say, well, what about this? And I'm going, well, that will slow me down a lot. And then I say, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. That's left for somebody else. And especially now with this particular amount of paper that you've got, you just get to a point where you go, well, listen, mate, I want this to be finished.
Yeah, but when you think about it, this is only a very small
percentage. That's when they say 7 million pages, and I've done 150,000, so that's nothing compared to what's actually there.
Yeah.
but at least you had a filter on. So you grab the stuff that's really interesting and that matters, and the stuff where you go, well, that's just drivel. What am I going to do with that? This, that, and the other. I mean, I found that with when the documents were released in 17 and 18, all these so-called informants for the FBI, and I'm going, what the hell do I do with a list of informants from Atlanta, Georgia, or in Alaska, or in Oregon, or what? And the only thing is that, well, we asked them whether anyone knew Lee Oswald. What the hell? You know. Besides, it's showing that every city was awash with at least 20 informants for the for the feds.
Oh yeah. I mean,
every city.
It gives you. You know, people always talk about the Stasi. You know.
The Stasi were superior to them.
But yeah, Stasi was superior. But America, when you think of the informants, the number of informants there as well.
The land of the free.
Land of the free. They're supposed to be held up as a shining beacon of light.
Yeah.
We're not the Stasi. Well, you know.
You're not far off it, mate.
You're on the way.
And also, this is another thing. You say Stasi, and I say Stasi. At the same time, when I look at Dallas, how easy people get ratted out, and that's even today, right? I watch these police videos on Facebook or YouTube, and yeah, somebody called up and saw somebody suspicious walking around. Now, whether that's true or not is a whole different kettle of fish. But that whole snitching mentality, and in Dallas the same thing. Daltex building. What's his name? Who got the Air Force guy who got picked up? Just somebody leaning out the window. There, he was in the building. Blah blah blah. And they arrested him as such. And it's all filmed and photographed. Outside the Texas Theater. Leave him to us. We'll take care of him. The cheering of Oswald when he was shot dead in the basement. The people opposite the courthouse were cheering out loud when they heard that Oswald was shot. That whole mentality and that easy, how easily that can be picked up, and just pointing someone out and go, yeah, no, I saw him. He's suspicious. And boom, next thing you know, you're behind bars. For what? That easy. Just get named and maimed, basically. Right, sorry.
Well, you know, these old finding aids are
I've got quite a few, actually.
Invaluable.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few finding aids in the collection.
Yeah, that I used to work with, and you know, when I look back through here, there's a very important set of files which are the later FBI files, and they're the 89A DL-60165 series. These files go from the 80s to the 90s, and they finish at NARA. They finish in 1993 at the first conference. The first JFK conference that was held in Dallas, and there it gives a perspective of what the FBI were doing, because they were looking at obviously people like you know, that Russian guy that came in there. What was his name? That wrote the book Passport to the Assassination. Yeah, he was there anyway. And they were obviously monitoring him, and they were monitoring other people. And we've had nothing. I've checked periodically over the years in the NARA collection. There's nothing beyond 1993 for that series. We need to ask for that series, because it's now 27, it's coming up 28 years. I mean, we need to know what they were sniffing around at in Dallas for a start. You know, who were they watching? Who were they following? Who were they interested in? And also, if any witnesses came forward, you know, because that's what they were doing. In those later files, you find lots of stuff. So that series, I think, is very important to, if anybody cares to write to the FBI and ask for post 1993 89A DL 60165. It looks like they got at NARA they've got volume 3 to volume 5, so you want volume anything post volume 5. And the other one that is very interesting is the 175. I'm not sure if they're here. That's a more recent set of FBI files. JFK Investigation Files. Let me just have a look, see if they're here. You actually go nuts looking at these files. Just actually trying to locate where things are. This is where you can get the fingerprint card jackets for John F. Kennedy, Lee Harvey Oswald, Marina Oswald, Jack Ruby, and David William Ferry.
Mm.
So there you go.
That's amazing that they still have the fingerprint cards.
Yeah. 3x5 index cards for Jack Ruby correspondence. Thanks to Harold Weisberg, we got the FBI JFK Assassination Investigation 3x5 index cards. That's 8 boxes. I remember looking at that.
That's a lot.
So
the documents I scanned on Harold Weisberg about 3-4 weeks ago, where they just don't like him at all because he's so inquisitive and he tells them where it's at. So the archivists and the feds and this, that, and the other, they talk amongst themselves and basically they say, well, this Weisberg is a real pain in the neck, and he keeps telling us, like, you need to go there and find that particular document in that section over there, blah, blah, blah. So he knows it better than the people that are running it as such. And of course they're not happy about that. It's like somebody sniffing in someone else's kitchen. Let them have it. Do I have that finding aid? Is that a copy?
that's one you sent me. So you got it. You sent me this.
You printed it out after.
I can't look at the screen. I'm addicted to paper.
Yeah. No shit.
I'm addicted to paper. But yeah, I mean, you were talking earlier on about Oswald's file, the counterintelligence file.
Yeah.
The 1058255 file, and before that was the 105 976 file. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's that we still don't understand. We don't understand how that file evolved into the 82555 and what happened to the material that was in the 976 file. But then there was one even before that, even before the 976 file, 105 976 file, which was, I think it was 105-0, which was must have been a temporary holding file for Oswald at one stage, because I found that on some file slips, early on when they were looking for Oswald material, doing file searches. I think Harold Weisberg looked into the file situation, but found it quite tricky, found it difficult. And people like Paul Hogg, he's looked at it over the years. It's not an easy subject, because the Bureau doesn't make it easy. I think Harold found some of the stuff. He got into the technical interpretations of the Bureau used. He got into their language. He got into the way they handle stuff. So that's a series of files at the National Archives I do recommend. I don't think they even named Harold Weisberg files. They're sort of like, because they're all his FOIA applications. 22 boxes. So if you want to get into some of the early stuff and the evidence, that guy broke his back. He did such a great job.
No, we all owe a debt to Harold Weisberg, one way or another.
I mean, he was a bit cantankerous.
No. I don't disagree on that. I mean, I think he's a lighter version of Harry, but I thought he was very precise with certain things and finding things and bringing them up, and and the guy must have had a hell of a fight ahead of him in those days, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That most of us cannot even comprehend because it's all pre-digital. Now you pick up the phone or you send a fax or an email and go, yo, blah, blah, blah. Week later, follow up, boom, why is this not, blah, blah, blah. Get on the phone, get quick results, this, that, and the other. And then you've got someone like Weisberg who just snail mails, and of course he will use the phone. But
the whole typewriting.
Exactly, the typewriting, all his letters, typed them all out. 24/7 practically.
I think he did. I think he was 24/7. He really wouldn't let go of it until his dying breath. I mean, it was.
Well, we all owe a great debt to him.
Yeah, we do indeed.
Because what he did with the Whitewash series and all that, it's essential reading for anyone. Anyone interested in this subject and says like, "Oh, I haven't read it," deeply ashamed themselves. But those are pivotal books, especially the first one, and Photographic Whitewash as well. They're very good. I've read them with gusto. I'm now more or less in and out the medical thing. The medical book he did, and I'm surprised by how much he knew. In 77, just like while the HSCA was going on and all that, and he wrote that book, and that book is 500-600 pages thick, which is like 3 of Whitewash books basically, and it's just the evidence and the questioning and the debating and this, that, and the other, and I've been reading it, and I'm just sitting there and I'm going, that's amazing what you pulled together that quick over that period of time. And, he knew his way around and how to find certain things, that's for sure.
He was, he had difficulty, with a lot of people in the bureaucracy that he was dealing with. But when he went, it's funny enough, when he went, we get into the FOIA office, there was someone there he did actually get on with quite well, and that was a guy called Quinn Shea. And Quinn's on a lot of his letters, and the letters are of a different tone. They're not the sort of rants that you get with the National Archives, where you get these. I mean, and quite rightly so. He was getting stupid replies from NARA, absolutely idiot replies. And
you'd expect these people know their
what
job.
What they're doing, what they're talking about.
And then when you get Weisberg, who basically will nail you to the cross for making mistakes like that, he doesn't suffer fools gladly, that's for sure.
But
because he knows.
With Jim Lazar, they absolutely work so hard to get stuff out of the bureau, and then the FOIA applications, and then directly with Jim Lazar to CIA and stuff like that. I mean, it was a huge effort, and when you go to those 22 boxes, I think it's the actual name is the heading is the Freedom of Information Office and Privacy Office or something like that. Those files, it doesn't, and then it may say Harold Weisberg right on the end, but there are definite must-see for anybody that's interested in, particularly the evidence in the early parts of the case, because so much of it is there. I mean, he was overwhelmed when I told him. that his files were there, because nobody told him.
Of course not.
Nobody told him.
No.
I think, if I remember right, he asked me to repeat it. He couldn't quite believe it. I said, no, it's there. I said, I've been looking at it this week. I've been looking at your files this week. And, you know, he was a tough customer, but his eyes watered up. It was an emotional moment for Harold. His stuff was actually available at the National Archives. It was a big thing.
Okay, on that note, we're going to call it a day. We've talked for almost 2 hours, so it's been a good day. I hope you all enjoyed this. It's slightly different than normal, but we'll return in a few weeks' time with one more talk just before the actual release of the archives on, I think it's going to be the 20th on a Saturday. And on top of that, we've got a few talks going on. I'm going to talk to Rob Clark and Doug Campbell of Quick Hits. And I'm going to talk at Project JFK. And I'll be showing a movie at the Lancer conference and at the Dealey Plaza UK conference. So there's plenty of material coming around about this archive. And then I'm going to take a break. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Just when you thought we were leaving and quitting, we're not. Malcolm's got a few more things to say. Go on, Malcolm.
Okay, we were talking earlier on about the House Select Committee on Assassinations incoming, outgoing document register, and I tried to give you a sense, or give people a sense of what we were missing. And this is just one page. This is page 7 from the first box. This is
redacted.
The whole page.
Yeah, except one
and then
column.
You see one thing which isn't redacted is a testimony of Frank Holloman. Well, I couldn't find that. I don't know where that is. I have a feeling that's MLK stuff. So it's e-birding, March 20th, 1978, Frank Holloman testimony, just there. So we've got page after page after page of redacted. That's a typical. This one is the review board. The review board asked for the files of Dallas figures, H.L. Hunt, Paul Rothermel, Nelson Bunker Hunt, Ray Hunt, Clint Murchison Jr. and Clint Murchison Sr. And the FBI provided 64 HQ files for those people. 64 HQ files. And as far as I can see when I look through these documents, actually I should let you have this, Bart, because I'm sure people would like to see this.
Okay.
It's an important set of documents. Much of this stuff was labelled NAR, which is the FBI equivalent of NBR, not assassination related.
Oh, right. I was going to say not at all relevant.
So this again is stuff which should be in the releases, should be in the latest releases. So I think, again, this is something that needs pursuing. This is for, you know, I've actually written at the top, essential right wing. Essential right wing. So that's the stuff there.
Thank you. Oh yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's great. What's next?
This one is this is an FBI, really weird FBI, which I must have picked up from when I looked at one of the field office files, probably from Boston. It looks like Boston. And in the margin, the FBI have written, we have 100-606 case file on Peter Dale Scott.
What is a 606 file?
I have not, 100-606 file, case file. So they must have a file. They've obviously got a file on Peter Dale Scott. They label.
Oh, connected to him on Facebook.
Yeah, apparently, Peter must have given this guy some documents. It says because it says the 3 FD302s were given to him by Peter Dale Scott. So that's 100-60636 file. Yeah. Professor Scott has 6,000 such documents, and they are part of the Warren Commission report. That obviously opened a file on Peter Dale Scott. Actually, you could do that because it gives part of it. Actually, there you go. You can have them. It's nice that I like to know if any of our fellow researchers are being looked at.
Harry was as well. I mean, from the documents. Yeah, he had quite a few FBI documents on his movements. Yeah, cool.
This is from the review board. Colonel Reich wrote a very indignant letter about Fletcher Prouty. And
Robert Weich.
yeah, and
Robert Weich wrote very strong letters about Fletcher Prouty.
but the most important thing I think you have to coincidentally, two people came across from the Pentagon to the review board to help out with their research into the military angle, the military intelligence angle. And the two people they sent were Tim Ray and Chris Barger. So they're from the Pentagon. And I give you the I've got Tim Ray's resume here.
I've got that.
Yeah, work experience. County Director for UK, Canada and Ireland. Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defence for International Security Affairs, Pentagon, Washington, DC. So, that's all very well. This guy comes across, and his first task seems to be, he doesn't have a neutral attitude about Colonel Jones or Prouty. The intent seems to be to make sure they're discredited. That's the intent for both of them. You can see that in the prelim stuff they do, or the memos they make. Everything is running in tandem. And then we at the end of all this, where they're busy trying to say that Colonel Jones is full of crap. They've actually reached somebody that knows something, and that's Stephen Weiss, which we've talked about before.
Yeah.
And where Stephen Weiss says, that basically that they had a meeting where prior to this meeting, they received word from Colonel Robert Jones, who ordered them, that's the 112th in Dallas, to offer full cooperation to the United States Secret Service in preparation for JFK's visit to Dallas. So, all those people that trash Jones are not reading the right stuff. They're not reading the right stuff. The second part of Colonel Jones is the people that say, well, you should disregard him because he wasn't an operations officer. Well, excuse me. When Special Agent Benavides of the Secret Service phones in on the 30th of December, I think, on the 3rd of December, to look for Jones, he phones the operational office. He he's looking for Jones about the Heidel card. That's what he's trying to do. He's looking for information on the Heidel card.
You should have talked to Don Stringfellow instead, because this is the enigma about the whole Heidel thing.
The problem is, you see, there's been a whole case built up on that Jones is not credible. He's not credible because the Prouty story about the Secret Service being apprised about cooperation from Jones, from the 112. Well, it is true. Here's a guy that was there at the meeting. 2, the Secret Service guy that phones into the operations office. And then all these clever clogs, if you go to the handbooks, go to the military intelligence handbooks for the 316th Intelligence Group and read what an intelligence officer is supposed to do. His task. He's a multitasker. He can be an operations officer if there's somebody missing with flu, if there's somebody not in for illness. These people are expected to multitask. So Jones could well have been there in the operations office. He could well have been an operations officer that day. All this crap that you get, it's just so annoying to me.
The best bit is...
But Barger and Ray had an agenda. Their agenda, coming from the Pentagon, was twofold. Destroy Prouty, destroy Jones. And they did. And I'm sorry to say I was part of it, because I copied a lot of that stuff, swallowed it, hook, line and sinker, and sent it here, there and everywhere. I think I sent it to Larry Hancock, and he wrote a whole thing about it. You know, it's... it annoys me though when I think about it. I was so gullible. It really does annoy me.
What I found this absolutely astonishing was when Jones testifies for the ACCA, which again isn't online, although Alan put a copy of it on the ARC website, but of course it has been so badly tagged that it won't be seen in anywhere. So I put it on, and I realized that it wasn't anywhere, and I was like, I'm really not really surprised about this, because in that particular interview he says he's being called by Don Stringfellow of the DPD, who gives him the name Heidel. And of course Stringfellow doesn't play any part whatsoever with Oswald, this, that and the other, but we know that he is connected to military intel. Then there's a document that he said that is being sent, and I've got trouble reading when it was sent, but Jones says that he got contacted by Stringfellow between 1 and 2 o'clock. Now Oswald got arrested at 10 to 2, right? Because the assassination is at 12:30. Apparently he goes to the rooming house, then he goes to whatever, to the Texas Theater, etc., etc. But by the time he's arrested, it's 10 to 2. And I'm thinking, that's really quick to get that ID, that Heidel name forward. Because on top of that, he wasn't part of the arrest team. No one of the arrest team utters a word about the Heidel ID. But yet Don Stringfellow manages to call at that time and give this information through to Jones, who then passes it on to the FBI, who makes 2 reports, one from headquarters and one from a local office, about the Heidel ID. That's how the Heidel ID is actually brought into play that day, there and then. There's no other person who can do that except that Stringfellow. I'm at a total loss how this is possible. Other than that, it's bollocks. You hear me, Larry?
So there we go. Obviously there are other things I was looking at, and I think the importance of looking at some of the stuff that the review board went after with the FBI. I think the additional request files, people need to request some of those. the miscellaneous, FBI miscellaneous documents files. These are all ARB requests. And if you don't ask for them correctly, they won't find them.
Here's the thing. Something needs to be set up as such, as a procedure, and say, write to this mail, put this text in the body, ask for this, and then basically just obliterate them with emails and requests for files.
Yeah, it would be a good idea.
Go on, couple more.
Sam Payton, Gerald Hill, 014919. Two of them? I don't get that.
No.
Amos Lee Ewins, you must have.
Yeah.
003082.
No, I've got, what's that? HSCA?
Yeah.
Amos Ewins HSCA? Not sure. I mean, I've got statements, but whether it's an HSCA report, I'll have to double check that. Amos. Well, he's still alive, I think. Amos Lee Ewins, audio, HSC, October 21.
That's that, you know, when we talked earlier on about the document from the counterintelligence staff, it was in, where was this? Oh, it was in the miscellaneous documents section. Okay. So this is a CIA staff printout, and it's 7th of June, London. Going into Oswald's file, well, going into the CIA's version of Oswald's file, which is slightly different. It's got an extra 0 in, so instead of being 201-289248, CIA's version is 201-02892448. So it says London, no record on Oswald's departure time from London, which I think is a great thing. But all this, you see, we need to. This is around this time we need to have the cable traffic that's going on.
I mean, this sounds like a stupid question, but what airport did he leave from?
London.
So which London airport? Oh, you
says
don't know
London.
that. So it wouldn't it be a stretch or a terrible idea to contact all these airports and go in your archives and find out about this period of time, what planes left for Finland? They've got to have that on record. It's got to be there.
Who knows? By the time
It's either Gatwick or Heathrow.
But by the time a few more years goes on, all this, they would have created some phony document to say that there was a plane which went to XYZ and then went to Helsinki. But instead of going to XYZ, it went to Helsinki first and dropped Oswald off. You know, who knows? You know.
No, but
The simple thing is, there was a manifest.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the problem? I mean, it goes on. I mean, I've got documents here from September of '64. As the Warren Commission was closing, J.D. Rankin is still trying to find out this flight time for London. They still haven't found it. I went through Ray Rocker's testimony, and he says, well, we never did find out what time he went. I mean, God.
I love Ray Rocker.
Just nuts.
That's a good note to end it all with. Okay, final try, last try. Thanks very much, everybody, and thank you, Malcolm. And we speak soon. Bye-bye.